You thought I was joking, right? Hey Maggie. We actually are going to build this in the kitchen. So, we've got our engine stand all set up. The block is over at the machine shop. Dropped it off yesterday. It should be done next Tuesday or Wednesday. Just a simple wash and a 30 over hone, a 30 over bore and hone. So the only things we have to do now is clean parts and inspect our pistons and rods. What's that look in your face, Kat?
Nothing.
For the record, whose idea was this?
Mine.
It was your idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you say?
Something about why don't you do it in the kitchen?
Right, I said I'm going to do a step-by-step engine rebuild, and then you said...
Why don't you do it in the kitchen?
Well, here we are. To be fair, she gets a new kitchen floor out of this deal once we're done.
It's a dumb idea.
No, it's a great idea. I'm telling you, people love this. So,
Dumbest idea I ever had.
No, you've had other dumb ideas.
Oh, I'm sure I have, but this...
This is a good idea. All right. So, we're, I guess the sink is probably the best.
It's probably not.
Well, it's part of the kitchen. It's the closest thing to a, workbench part. We're going to be cleaning a lot of stuff we can't do in the kitchen. Like, for instance, cleaning down the crank and the pistons and rods. We're going to have to do that stuff outside. I've already done massive parts cleaning in the house. And there's a whole video about that, and I don't want to talk about it right now. So, yeah, a lot of stuff is going to have to get done in the backyard. But we're going to avoid the garage, we're going to avoid the shop and everything. We'll do everything as much as we possibly can right here in the kitchen. So, all right. We covered the crankshaft last time. So now let's talk about pistons and rods. Now, I know you guys are, if you're watching this, you're obviously working on a budget because, like, you're building an engine in your kitchen, right? So you're going to try to save as many of your original parts as possible, including the pistons. So assuming you can get away with a standard bore motor, just a hone, or you go with a 10 over and you can reuse your pistons, we're not going to reuse these. Our block is going 30 over and it's getting a different set of pistons entirely. But in the event that you are going to try to save yours, a couple of things you have to look at, right? Obviously, first make sure that the dome is flat. Couple of little, not dome, the top of the piston is flat. Couple of little nicks or gouges, whatever. It's kind of normal for an older motor, right? But just make sure that you don't see any obvious cracks or defects or dents or whatever. I mean, this is I'm stating the obvious, but the next thing you want to do is check for crushed ringlands. So what I do is take one of the old pistons, or one of the old rings, right? Break it, and then use it to trace through the ringlands and make sure there's no tight spots. Now, while you're at this, you can also clean the ringlands, and you do that. Don't use the end that you just broke. Use the unbroken end. And see, this is why I have to do this in the kitchen sink. You don't want this on the floor, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. So you take your unbroken end of the ring and push it through the ringlands and knock that carbon out. Well, you see what's coming out of there? Right, because obviously when you put this thing back together again, you want a nice clean surface for the ring to ride on. So repeat as necessary. Do the top two rings, two ringlands. Now, obviously, cracks are very important to look for. Look for any stress marks here at the bottom of the pin, in the pin area. Generally, when a piston cracks, when you have a problem with a piston, this is where you're going to find the damage, and more likely than not, it's going to be right here in this area. So, but anyway, that's if you're going to reuse your original pistons. The rods you're almost certainly going to reuse. Now, one of the benefits of working with a 60s Mopar like I'm doing here is that these things come from the factory with fully floating pins. And of course, you want to make sure the pin is tight. You want to make sure there's no play between the rod and the pin, which if you're dealing with a press pin, obviously that's not an issue. But you also want to make sure that the pin rides solidly in the piston. So you want to grasp it like this, hold it tight, and try to find any type of play, any motion beyond. Yeah, no, this is tight. And go over all of them carefully. What I like to do with these is gas them out first, because some oil laying there in the bore will take up slop. So if you gas them out really good, you knock the oil out, you'll really feel if there's any play there. But definitely something you want to look at. Now, like I said, that's because I'm dealing with an engine that has fully floating pins from the factory. It's nice when you can get them, but not necessary. And there really is a performance advantage. I mean, unless you're turning 7,000 RPM for hours on it, you're really not going to find an advantage of fully floating pins. I like them because I'm a perpetual tinkerer, right? Like, that's one of the reasons why whenever I build something, I always make serviceability like the main priority. I want to be able to pull the heads in 10 minutes and get in there, right? Because if I want to swap pistons, if I want to do something like that, I can do it without any drama. You know what I mean? There's no right? You get the idea. So, the connecting rod. Hard to tell if they're straight because, you can't just lay a straight edge on them, right? Because you have two different widths. The small end and the big end are different widths. But, obviously do whatever you can to ascertain that that thing is straight, that it's not bent at all. One of the telltale signs when you've got a bent rod is you'll find scuff marks on the side of the piston. So let's say this rod was laid over this way a little bit. You'll find that the piston will have scuff marks in the direction of lean of the connecting rod. So if you don't see any scuff marks around there, the piston head looks normal. There's no excessive wear on the skirts. Oh, that's the other thing too. You always want to look at the skirts. Sometimes you'll get chips, cracks, everything missing out of here. But anyway, do whatever you can to ascertain the straightness of the connecting rod. Some creativity is in order. Now, do you have to have this thing resized? Should it be bored and honed, resized? And the answer to that is possibly. So one of the things I look for is, can you remove the cap without any real struggle? And on this one I obviously can. This comes right off. So I know that there's no big end distortion. That's about a perfect factory fit. Okay. Now I know that certain engines, like a small block Chevy, you'll never be able to do that. They never come off like that. You've always got to wrestle it and work it back and forth, right? That doesn't mean that it's bad, but make sure that when you're going to check to see if it's round, that you've got the nuts in place and torqued down, and because it'll hold its shape when it's compressed, but when you release it, they want to, right? So make sure that the nuts are on and torqued when you check for straightness or you check for roundness. So your parting lines, you want to run a thumbnail over the parting lines. You want to make sure that you can't catch your fingernail on them. If you can't catch your fingernail on them, it means the meat between the rod and the cap is good. You want to look for a crosshatch. You want to be able to make sure, now this rod is still a little dirty, we're going to clean this up, but you want to make sure that you can see a crosshatch in there from the final hone. If you can't see a crosshatch, or you see that there are some areas that are heavily scuffed and other areas that are clean, well then you want to send these things out. Very rarely do you have to actually resize them. Rod bolts. When do you change rod bolts? Now it depends on the usage of the engine. If it's a high RPM motor, meaning it's going to see fairly frequent use over, let's say, 5,000 RPM, might not be a bad idea to change them. If it's a street driver, you're just rebuilding this thing to run to and from work or cars and coffee and stuff like that, no man, don't worry about it. These rod bolts are stronger than you can ever imagine. If the motor was subject to abuse, if it was driven by Batman, if it's in its previous life, then yeah, go ahead and change them, because you know, they're probably fatigued from. But again, it's a judgment call. Rod bolts are not cheap, so you know you don't really want to spend the money if you don't have to. And also the known quality of what's there. Chrysler used extremely good material on the rod bolts of these engines. I mean, I've never seen a rod bolt fail. I've seen on a small block Mopar, I've seen caps come apart, but I've never seen a bolt fail. So, you know, judgment call. And also you could measure them for stretch. There's another reason why when I take an engine apart, I always use ratchets and wrenches. I never use air tools because you want to feel each bolt as it comes loose. If either of these had been stressed or stretched during it would have a different torque feel. It would have a different breakaway feel, and I would pick that up right away and know to check for stretch on it. But I mean, those are the important highlights. Other than giving these things a real good cleaning in preparation for the new Pistons, there's really not much I'm going to do with these. So, see, Kat, that wasn't so painful.
No.
No, we'll get the block in here and we'll get the heads in here, and all of the various odds and ends. See, I'm not even going to take up much of the cooking area.
You're not taking up any of the cooking area.
No, all right, that's it for now.
Okay.
All right, that's it for now. So tomorrow we're going to go over the heads. A lot of ground to cover on those things. I'll see you tomorrow.